I was sitting on a panel one day at my alma mater. They asked me to speak. And one of the questions was, who are the women that helped you get to where you are? There were exactly zero.
Yeah.
Because it was all men. And that's great. My dad was a huge mentor. My husband's a giant ally. My boss, but everyone I've worked with or for have been men. And so I'm like, I don't have that. And I want to change that. And so that's where I really started. I launched my podcast. I started to do a bunch of different other things.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by Toni Will. Toni, how are you today?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you coming on. So Toni is a trailblazing leader, speaker, and author dedicated to empowering women. She is the first general manager in the history of the ECHL, which is a minor league hockey program, and she is the GM of the Kalamazoo Wings, among many of her business ventures and successes over time. She even finds time in her, when she's not working, to complete 2 Ironman races and is the holder of 2 Guinness World Records.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was just pretty happy that I made it to work on time today. So you're already making me look bad, but it is a pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks. Those all didn't happen all at the same time. So, but I'm happy to dive in and explain.
Well, my curiosity when I went through this, obviously a sports fan, I want to get to that, but I got to hear about the 2 Guinness World Records to start off.
Yeah, well, they're actually tied into my sports career. So we set 2 Guinness World Records at the Kalamazoo Wings game, one in 2019 for the largest lightsaber battle on Star Wars night.
Oh.
And so it was pretty cool. It was fun. It was definitely probably in my top 3 moments. And it's not like I'm a big Star Wars fan or anything.
Right.
To see it, the imagery of it was really cool. And then we set the Guinness World Record a year ago, like right now, October of 2024, for the most waving foam fingers at our 50th anniversary celebration home opener last year.
And how many is that?
I have to go back and look at the numbers. I think 3,214, something like that.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. And here's something that's even cooler. The foam finger that we had made for the event, the Guinness World Records decided to open up a museum in London. I think they're building it right now, and that foam finger is going in the museum.
Very cool. That's a nice thing to have forever. You make it overseas, you go to London, take a nice little picture with it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's hard to set a Guinness World Record. It's no joke. You have to be extremely organized, and there's a lot of moving parts. But it was worth it both times. So we did 2. We're good. I think.
I was going to say, is a 3rd one on the horizon?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I know. I know they have some around here. I mean, minor league hockey. And minor league hockey to me is just a great atmosphere in general. But I know there's the Hershey team that I think sets records every year for the most teddy bears thrown because they do it for the Children's Hospital.
Yep.
And I see clips of that every year being in the general area of that. And I think one of theirs might actually be, I believe, a Guinness record for most teddy bears at one time or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And actually, a little fun hockey connection. This world is small. One of the assistant coaches for Hershey is our former head coach, Nick Bootland.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, did you grow up a hockey fan?
No, okay. I did not. I grew up in Kalamazoo. I'm born and raised here, but I did not. I went to some games growing up here and there, but I did not, which is the irony that I'm doing this for a living is not lost on me.
Yeah, because it's funny because forgetting the fact that you're female, which makes it impressive enough that you're doing it, now a time when you see a lot in sports is, a lot of the people that become management, GMs, coaches, and so forth were players at some point. Even if they didn't make it to the highest level, they had studied it and trained in it their entire lives. So how does a casual female hockey fan end up becoming the first GM in the league?
Yeah, the short answer is by accident. The second, the more long-winded answer is so at this level of hockey, and I want to point out, there's the National Hockey League, then there's the American Hockey League, and then the ECHL. The ECHL and the AHL are both considered minor league hockey. So for people listening to this, if they're not aware of that, it's important to know. Kalamazoo Wings are at the ECHL, and we're a developmental league. So we're affiliated at the AHL and the NHL level. Our players move up and down that system. So that's the hockey upside. The more the business side is where it's shaped differently. So the general manager at the National Hockey League level has very hands-on in the recruiting and on-ice product. At the minor league level, GMs usually are not, especially at this level at the ECHL. They're focused on business. And so that's what I was brought in to do 11 years ago. And my hiring conversation was actually quite interesting because I applied for a totally different job within the organization. And it was actually a high-end fashion boutique and a hotel, but they're a hospitality company and they're privately owned, and they happen to own the hockey team as well. And HR called me and said, "You're overqualified for this other job." And I said, "I know." And they said, "You'll get bored." And I said, "I know. And that's okay. I don't want to be the face of anything. I don't."
Yeah.
My kids were young at the time. I'm okay with stepping back. And they said, "We're going to come back to you with something different." And I said, "Okay." So they came back to me a few weeks later and we said, "We got something for you." And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "The Kalamazoo Wings." And I said, "The hockey team?" And they go, "Yeah." And she goes, I go, "It's still around?" Because at that point it was like 40 years old and someone that's lived here her whole life. And then she goes, "That's why we're asking you to come in and do this." And I said, "I don't know shit about hockey."
Right.
And she was like, "Well, we don't need at this level. We're not looking for a hockey expert. That's what the head coach and director of hockey operations does. What you do is all things sales, marketing, community relations, public relations, broadcasting, game operations. That all rolls up to you." And she goes, "You know this community, you love it, you know how to sell, you know how to build cultures around that, you know business." And I said, "Well, I guess that's true." It was true.
Yeah.
But then I learned the not so sexy side of sports is the pay what you're paid.
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, it's so lucrative." No, and not at this level. And so
Well, you're at a different level. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the key to that. But you're designed to make it a fun product. That's basically what your job is.
yeah, it's sports entertainment. It's 20% of the fans that come through the door are hockey purists. They're our season ticket holder fan base. The other 80% are looking for entertainment
Yeah.
to come and do. And so the goal over time is to take those entertainment seekers and have them move into a more higher commitment product. It doesn't have to be a season ticket, but they have such a good time they want to keep coming back.
Of
And so
course.
that's my staff's job, and that's what I've been doing the past 11 years.
So I'm going to guess the fact that you're still there after 11 years, that you're doing a nice job. So from an average attendance standpoint, I assume you've seen a nice increase over your 11 years.
Yeah, if you were to look at it, like when I give keynotes or talks, I'll show this graph of where it was before I started and then where it's gone in the last 11 years. And it's a perfect line like
Yeah.
this. We keep, average attendance rises every year, even with one season off for the pandemic. We were closed. We did not play in the 2020-2021 season because of where Michigan was at in
Yeah.
terms of gathering indoors. And so, but we've seen a steady increase each season, and we've won several awards under my leadership. But I'll tell you, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. My gender plays a role in some of the polarity. The way I think is different.
Yeah.
There are certain people I don't like that I don't have a hockey background, and they're vocal about it, but that's okay. So
Yeah.
it's
But based upon how you explain the position, I would agree that a hockey background is not necessary. I mean, the way you described it, you then went on to say sales, marketing, this and that. My initial word was marketing because obviously you're building a product. So you're building a product. I think a peripheral knowledge of hockey is sufficient. I don't think you need to know, okay, we're not forechecking enough or we're not being enough aggressive enough in the defensive zone. It doesn't have any bearings on what you're trying to accomplish.
correct. It doesn't, and it's hard for some fans or even purists more directly
Yeah.
to understand that. And when we're looking to bring people in to the doors and try hockey, hockey is a 97% white male sport.
Yeah.
And so that's not what our community is made up of.
Right.
Our community is not 97% white male.
Yeah.
So we need to appeal to outside of that demographic. And so it's like, well, let's look at the makeup of this community and let's do different games that appeal to different,
Yeah.
cultures and pop, not just regular culture, but pop culture and demographics. And
Mhm.
so everyone feels welcome. So there's been a lot of Guinness is a great example. So, but we've done Rainbow Ice. That game is polarizing every single year. We're the first team to ever dye the ice rainbow. And it
Mhm.
really is about hockey is for everyone, truly, in every sense of the word. It's not, the rainbow is synonymous with LGBTQ plus, which is part of it, but it's also
Mhm.
about gender and race and
Yeah.
socioeconomic and abilities and all the things. So it's an interesting world to live in for sure.
So was the bigger struggle, or is the biggest struggle your lack of hockey knowledge or your gender in terms of how people perceive you?
I think it depends on the person. I think the gender is interesting because you will get people who think they can talk to me in a certain way because I'm 5'2" and
Mhm.
I'm a woman. They wouldn't say the things that are said to me, or I've been approached in ways that are not okay, where my safety is compromised.
Mhm.
Luckily, I'm a feisty Italian, and I'm not worried about defending myself, but they wouldn't do that if it were our head coach, for instance. Like
Sure,
they
sure.
just wouldn't say that. So there's that side of it. A lot of it, though, you see mainly, the keyboard warriors, and that's on that side of it. It usually has more to do with not having a hockey background.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though because if you look at sports across the globe, all these barrier breaking things that women have done are getting less and less play now in the media. But I think that's a good thing because I think they're becoming more commonplace. For example, the NBA referee. You watch an NBA game now; they don't even mention that one of the referees is female. Where
Right.
it would be the lead story 7 years ago. NFL every week on the red zone, you're seeing a side judge or something who's female, and I'm sure that they'll come, or one of them will get promoted to referee. Uh, that takes time for anyone to become a referee, so I think they're in the normal progression. I think this year Major League Baseball had a first umpire do a game,
Mhm.
so it was, I think, a story for the first day, and then that was it. Just like they critique every other umpire, they're critiquing her, with her balls and strikes calls and everything like that. So I think it's refreshing to see that it's not as big a deal anymore. So I think that's ultimately the objective: is it for it not to be a big deal?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And it's interesting because in other sports, you're seeing some of the progress being made. Hockey's a tough one. I mean, hockey is a real tough one.
But they broke the barrier this year, hockey in the NHL.
We find,
First,
yes,
first assistant, for people who don't know, the first assistant coach who's actually working a bench.
yes, which was phenomenal. So we're getting there. It's slow. It's slow.
Yeah,
But I've just really worked hard at this level, talking about it, and not just talking about it, but doing something about it. And
yeah.
that's the key. It's not like I stand on my soapbox here. I actually like do things within sports to lift women up. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've created women in sports resource group within our league. I've done it outside the league. I'm on the steering committee for the National Sports Forum. I'm on the Global Council for ALSD, which is
Mm-hmm.
another sports conference, and all about lifting women up, the generations either next to me or behind me, and how I can help them connect, learn, and grow, and in their chosen field of sports. So I want to ensure that I'm actually doing something about it, not just saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm a woman, my story's cool," because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not about that.
Do you find that by you doing that, do you feel that some of the men are resentful of that? Because I've heard the argument, which, by the way, I don't agree with, because and you can make the same thing about race. So it's kind of generally the same kind of thing. That by you doing that, you're making the woman issue more prevalent by trying to give women an advantage maybe over men who don't have necessarily these forums. Because I don't, an association that you just mentioned for women, there's probably not that same association just for men.
Right. Well, and yes, of course. Yeah, I've heard that argument too.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
like, well, it's been that way just for men forever. I mean, where this all started was I'm the governor for the team as well. So if anyone's not aware, in pro sports, instead of a board of directors, there's board of governors, and it's just the governance of the league, uh,
Mhm.
financially, hockey ops, the whole thing. And I'm the only female governor, and I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm sitting in a board meeting, which is 60 people deep, and I'm like, oh my God, there's just all these men. And so that's when I decided I wanted to do some work in this space. And so it's interesting because women are caught in this classic double bind right here, which is I speak up.
Yeah.
It's like, like, oh, now we're doing this for women. We don't do it for men. But if I don't speak up, then what?
Yeah. Right. You're in a tough spot because you're trying to be proactive to give people resources that you didn't have to achieve your success.
And that's where it all started. I was sitting on a panel one day at my alma mater. They asked me to speak. And one of the questions was, who are the women that helped you get to where you are?
And
There
you
were
know,
exactly zero
yeah.
because it was all men. And and that's great. My dad was a huge mentor. My husband's a giant ally, my boss, but everyone I've worked with or for have been men. And so
Right.
I'm like, I don't have that. And I want to change that.
Mhm.
And so that's where I really started. I launched my podcast. I started
Yeah.
to do a bunch of different other things. So,
But it's interesting though, because your mentors in life, whether it was your dad or whoever else, or a guy, another gentleman who supported you along the way, they're mentoring you on how to be a successful business person.
mhm.
What you're doing is you're taking it one step further, because I imagine a lot of what you're talking to people about is dealing with people who have trouble dealing with you simply because you're female. Because the skill set to be effective in your job, the skill set, it's irrelevant whether you're male or female. The skill set to do the job. It's the fact that you have to take it one step further and have to deal with some of this other nonsense that you have to deal with. So we said before, you struggle potentially with two things: people questioning that you don't have a hockey background and that you're female.
Mhm.
If it was me in your position, I'd only be dealing with half of that.
Correct. Yep, that's exactly it. And
Yeah,
then there's the other notion of, oh, well, women run into this all the time. Well, how can she have that job and have a family?
of course.
Well, right, but we don't question men.
Yeah, this is the old. Yeah, this is the conversation that we've heard 1,000 times. What I find interesting in the news. So I'm going to go back to a recent news story, which is in sports but not in hockey, because we actually talked about this last week when we were at dinner. The WNBA recently, who has a female commissioner.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm sure you heard the stories. One of her players came out and basically revealed a private conversation that she had, and where she was very critical of some of the players in her league, and the comments were very critical of her. And what made it so surprising is you constantly hear about women need to support women, build people up. And now you kind of have the head of the league and some of the star players are kind of taking shots at each other, which really is counterintuitive of building women up in sports. When you heard that, did you have any thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so this is why I launched Women in ... which is my podcast,
Yeah.
because for whatever reason, women have been culturally conditioned to compete with one another
Mhm.
instead of lift each other up. And really, this goes back to a mindset. It's an abundance mindset instead of scarcity. There is only one Toni Will, and it doesn't matter what I choose to do in my career, but there's only one of me, which means I'm not competing with anyone. I'm
Except for yourself.
I'm just competing with me.
Yeah.
So there could be 10 other female GMs, and we could see this growing and growing, which is great because then there's just one of me and then there's one of this female GM and there's no competition. So that's why I chose to launch my podcast, Women In, and I have men and women on the podcast talking about whatever they do, what's interesting in their lives, and then how women were influential to get them to be the person they are today. And so it really is just about storytelling and lifting women up and supporting one another and what we're trying to accomplish and having that abundance mindset. We're not competing with one another. We're not better than one another. Rising tides lifts all ships type of.
Okay, fine. I'll be on your podcast. I see where you're going with that. No problem.
Yeah.
So talk now about that and moving away from the hockey a little bit, because obviously a lot of your bio and your resume is about lifting women up in many ways. I know you kind of do a lot of speaking,
Mhm.
and things like that. So what is your ultimate objective with this? Is it just to empower women to have more confidence? Is it an attempt to break down barriers in certain industries? Is it just to give them self-awareness? What, in a perfect world, what are you trying to do with this?
Yeah, all the above. But a lot of times what I see women do is make themselves small.
Mm.
And they are afraid to go for their goals. They're afraid to manage their own money. They're afraid to start that business. They're afraid to say, I want to work outside the house. Whatever it is, they're just, they don't know how. And they think they're alone. And so
Yeah.
it's like, hang on a minute. No, you can do all these things that you want
Hmm.
to do. But it starts with self. You got to go inside before you can make the changes externally.
Yeah.
And I do think it's very generational. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. It's much different than, say, for a boomer or it is a millennial. And then when you go down to my kids' generation, it's becoming more prevalent that women are just independent and doing these things. But especially in my generation, you kind of see a 50-50 split. I don't even think it's 50-50. I think it's less than that. But really it is about building confidence and not just building confidence, but how do you do it?
Hmm.
Because there are so many speakers and thought leaders out there that are like, hey, look at me, look at all I've accomplished. And then they don't tell you how to friggin' do it.
Yes.
I'm here to say, here's how I did it. And I talk about my 6 leadership pillars, my book's
Yeah.
coming out next year. Like I actually give tools and resources to say, this is the roadmap. You make it what it is for you to accomplish your goals and be the badass that you are.
What's the biggest mistake looking back? What's the biggest mistake that you think you made personally on the journey that if you had to do something different? So obviously you've been very successful, so you obviously did a lot more things right than wrong. But I'm sure if we all look back and reflect, like, oh crap, I wish I didn't do that, or maybe it's I wish I would have done this sooner. What do you look back with a little regret on?
Yeah, so I did change, like I quit drinking. That's probably the biggest thing. I did not like my relationship with alcohol. I've been very open about that. I
Yeah,
think
I was going to get to that.
yeah, that's part of it is like, do I wish I would have quit sooner? Sure. Um, but I'm glad I did. And I certainly
So
made mistakes in
since
that.
you bring up alcohol, I'm going to obviously ask a question. When you say you didn't like your relationship with alcohol, were you dependent, and only speak what you're comfortable with, obviously, were you dependent on alcohol to get you through a stressful day, or were you just a very casual drinker who was casual a lot of the time? What was your relationship?
So there's a distinction that needs to be made here when it comes to alcohol. There's a physical addiction, which is less than 10% of the population, and then
Yeah,
there's an emotional addiction,
sure.
which is where most people are lumped into, whether they like to admit it or not.
Mhm.
I would fall into the emotionally attached category. And so, could I get through a day? Sure. And that's part of the problem. It's gray area drinking. It's, you get in these habits of a couple glasses of wine every night because
Yeah.
culturally that's how we roll in
Mhm.
America, or drink responsibly is the moniker on all these alcohol brands. But what does responsible mean?
Right.
So what it really boiled down to is I didn't like my relationship with alcohol.
Mhm.
At some point in my late 20s, early 30s, it moved from social to coping.
Okay.
And I just didn't like it. And I didn't like the person I was when I was drinking. And I'm someone that's very much values health and wellness. And that did not make sense when you learn about what alcohol actually is. It is anything but health and wellness.
Mhm. Right, right. Well, that's a great thing that you got to that realization before it became more of a problem, and so forth. So I'm guessing at any point did it affect any other aspect of your life besides your, as you said, your mental? I mean, did it affect relationships? Did it affect you professionally?
I think it did on some level. I mean, when you come to work hungover, let's say, like if you go out late the night before or you
Yeah,
go to work dinner and you're not 100% fully functioning,
yeah,
yeah, I think it affect work performance for sure. My relationships, it never was like this. A marriage ended or anything over it,
right.
but it was clearly like, yeah, that's not. I mean, I didn't like myself when I
You
was
weren't the best you that you could have been.
aren't
Yeah,
the best you. So, but I will say this: I definitely, and I'm not afraid to say this, I had a problem with my drinking.
right.
Whether our culture would say it was a problem, I bet you our culture would probably say that I was a problematic drinker as well. But the bottom line is, I didn't like it. And I like to tell people that, like, you don't have to be like our culture makes someone that has this vision of a drinking problem as this homeless person in
Yeah,
a brown paper bag under a highway bridge, and that's That's not it. In fact, you look at the data, it's upper middle class, and they're certainly not homeless. So there's a lot of stigmas that I have very much taken on to say, I'm not quitting quietly. I'm going to quit out loud, and I'm going to be proud of it. And I'm willing to talk about it because a lot of people suffer in silence, and they don't need to.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people won't think of, okay, going to work with a hangover once in a while is such a big deal. And some people might think, all right, having 2 glasses of wine at dinner, isn't a big deal. But, when you come to the realization that you don't like how you're becoming or you don't like how it's impacting whatever aspect of your life, I think it's quite impressive that you say, okay, I need to make a change before this goes in a direction even further that I don't want it to go.
Oh, exactly. And it's really hard. It is the hard. I've done a lot of hard things. I mean, we talk about the Ironman, Guinness World Records, writing a book. Like those things are hard. Turning around a hockey franchise, really hard. Quitting drinking, that's probably the hardest thing I've done. It is not easy to do. And to do it, knowing that there's going to be judgment and cause immediately when people think, oh, you don't drink, oh, she must have had a problem. I just don't really care if people think that.
Yeah. No, you know what's funny? I don't drink. When I say I don't drink, I've never drank in my life.
Yeah.
My last sip of any alcohol was probably a sip of champagne at my wedding, and I'm married 26 years.
Yeah.
But I don't drink, and I always wondered that when I go out to even a work event and I get my Arnold Palmer, which is what I'll get when everyone else is having drinks. I wonder if they think, oh, he must be like a recovering, or he can't handle his alcohol, so he's gonna,
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that all the time. I mean,
Yep.
people who know me just know how I am. But yeah, I always wonder that at events with people that I don't know.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Why did you choose to be a non-drinker?
Yeah, I don't even know if it was a conscious thing. My parents, growing up, we had a whole bar at home stocked with every kind of alcohol. That bar was never opened. Like my parents never drank in front of me. My dad once a year on vacation, like once a year, would get like a strawberry daiquiri.
Mm-hmm.
Or my mom once every 3 years we get a whiskey sour. So I grew up in a house that no one ever drank. I went to a party school, but again, I hung out with people. I was on an athletic team, and we weren't allowed to drink during season.
Mm-hmm.
So that worked perfect for me because I never had to. And when it was out of season, I just never did. I think part of it's a control thing. I never liked not to be in control of myself. So I saw bailing out friends who were drunk and you had to carry them up or you had to, point them to the bathroom or I never wanted to be in a situation to be dependent on someone else. So maybe it's my, being a control freak, I think was it. But at the same point in time, I never understood the concept when people would say, what are you doing tonight? To me, the answer is going out to dinner, going to a movie, hanging out with friends. I never thought of drinking as an activity. So when someone said, what are you doing tonight? We're drinking. I always had a problem with that. Like to me, drinking, you can go out to dinner and have a drink. You can go watch a movie, hang out with your friends and have a drink. But if the sole purpose of what you're doing is to drink, I just never saw that.
Right. And that's exactly it. We have given meaning to the word drink in our culture that it automatically equates to alcohol. But I have a cup right here that has water in it and you're drinking maybe coffee or whatever.
Green tea right here. Yeah.
That's a drink too.
Mm-hmm.
When you really boil it down, it is fascinating. And the whole notion I talked about, because I have coaching clients, my entrepreneur side of my life, where I help people reduce or remove alcohol. I grew up with alcohol in the house too, like, the bar situation, but how many, is that really normal? I don't know. What we think it is because that's how we grew up, but
back in the day, everyone would give you gifts. My dad, he was a school administrator. My mom was a teacher. Back then, you got wine for the holidays or you got a thing of scotch and it just went into there, And it's funny, we have it at our house now because occasionally a client will give me a gift or whatever. We have 5 bottles of alcohol on our counter. They've been there for 5 years. One's an Absolute vodka, these nice bottles of wine, and they're decorative.
It's funny to me. And the other thing that I always point out, because I have these mugs made and shirts and stuff, is cool kids don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Alcohol is a drug.
Yeah, sure.
But boy, has Big Alcohol done a great job of marketing that and making it drugs and alcohol. If we sat there and thought about every time I drank, I was doing drugs, that would be a lot less appealing
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
alcohol. It's just fast. So I just,
Yeah, you'd be a drug addict at that point.
exactly. It's like, well, no. I'm like, yeah, alcohol's a drug
Right.
and it's a class 1 carcinogen. So one bottle of wine is the equivalent to smoking 10 cigarettes.
Is that what it is?
It is.
Oh.
It is. And it's like, wait, whoa. And they're like, oh, I've never smoked a day in my life. Well, that's great, but you're still taking in a carcinogen.
Right.
So when you really like strip back and start to question this stuff, it's like, why am I doing this? It's ethanol. Alcohol is ethanol. That's what we put in our vehicles to make them go.
Right. Yeah. It's
And
interesting.
so is that what we want in our bodies and more importantly, in our brain? Because alcohol breaks through the blood brain barrier. And so when you study it, it's pretty compelling to not do it.
Well, I think it's funny when people give you a gift like that. Like I clearly they don't know me, you know. So I'm kind of like that. Someone a few months ago gave me this. I'll get a box of cigars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just as I don't drink, I'm sure it's will shock you. I don't smoke
You don't
either.
smoke. Yeah.
So when people come to my office, I'm like, "Does you or your husband like cigars?" And I'm just giving them away, and I keep the box out for decoration.
Yeah. It's fun. Like how we hand over these like drugs to be like, here.
Kill yourself. Yeah.
Yes. It's silly.
Yeah.
It's silly. So yeah.
Nice box, got my name on it, so that's kind of cool. Uh, so, what kind? If I said to you, all right, who's your ideal audience? Like, because you're obviously, I think part of what you do, you're doing these TED Talks and stuff like that. I'm guessing all of your stuff isn't necessarily about women. It's, I imagine, about business and things like that. So, what kind of audiences or businesses do you think would most benefit from hearing from you?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. Business specific, it's going to be women in male dominated industries. It's going to be women business owners. And then on the alcohol free side of my life, I coach men and women. It's really individuals who are looking to that value health and wellness,
Mm-hmm.
that benefit from working with me or my story or hearing what I have to say.
Now, so back to the health and wellness thing. So I find this fascinating. So you cut out alcohol. Now, are you one of those from a food perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Are you only eating clean? Do you consider, or do you have what we'll consider a normal diet?
It depends on who's measuring, like what their definition of
Yeah.
clean is, but I eat clean probably 85% of the time. It's been an evolution for sure.
Yeah.
I like to experiment, have an experimental mindset with things. So when I quit drinking, it was like, well, let me see how I feel. I started off on like a 30-day break and I just kept lengthening. I did the same thing with meat. I stopped eating meat for 2 years. And to connect it back to this alcohol thing real quick, because it's funny, I didn't stop eating meat because I was a meataholic and I just couldn't eat enough meat. I just stopped for a health and wellness decision. Same thing can hold true with alcohol. But I wanted to see how I felt. I wanted to see if inflammation was less. I wanted to see how my energy levels were.
Right.
And I did that for a couple of years. I quit drinking caffeine for a couple of years. I tried that out and just different lifestyle changes. I ate on a plant slant for a while. So I wasn't completely plant-based, but I wanted to try it. So I often find for me, the place where I find the most balance is I eat, I don't track my calories, but it's a healthy amount of proteins, lots of fruits and veggies, mainly whole foods. And then I sprinkle in some of the small things I like popcorn, natural popcorn, or I don't know, a bowl of cereal here and there. So
You got, right. You got to, yeah. Which is funny because I imagine you running the marketing side of a hockey team. What do people do when they go to a sporting event? They get hot dogs, they get chicken fingers and fries, they get popcorn, they get ice cream, they get beer, they get soda. And I'm sure some of your marketing goes around, okay, I'm sure you have food deals or, I know like the teams around here, maybe you don't have a, dollar hot dog night or, things like that. So it's kind of funny how, some of what I'm sure stuff that you've kind of gotten away from personally, I'm sure you're having discussions with to promote getting people into the arena.
Absolutely. And also knowing that we have options there. It's been really important to me to have healthier options for people who choose not to eat meat or who choose to not like we have NA options that are beyond just water and soda, NA meaning non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
So offering these things
Sure.
to individuals, so it's not just the junk.
Yeah.
And so being vocal in that, and that's part of what I do too, is when I have a seat at these tables is saying, hey, hang on, have we thought about this? And raising my hand and saying that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, no, you definitely, I can see why you speak a lot, because obviously you're very passionate about, these things, about the women, obviously, and the alcohol thing. The other one thing you mentioned that I kind of wanted to bring up in our last few minutes, you kind of talk about, I guess, certain people who want to, I guess, make a little extra money along the way. Kind of, you have your 9 to 5, but then kind of building a side hustle in your 5 to 9. And I've heard that phrase before, 9 to 5, and then 5 to 9. And I've read some books, and I forget where specifically, but they kind of said a lot of times the difference makers between person 1 and person 2 isn't what they do during the working day. It's what they do outside the working day, whether it's that first hour when they first wake up, whether it's, laying in bed and snoozing, or whether it's working out, whether it's at nighttime, watching that rerun again, or whether it's taking half hour to read a book, or whether it's or putting your phone down at a certain time, or, so kind of talk about really quickly the 5 to 9.
Yeah. So I do have a 5 to 9, obviously. But I didn't set out, and how I like to frame this too is talking about working as a whole. There's like 4 categories in my mind. There's job, career, passion, and calling.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I've seen in my career or coaching other clients. Like sometimes we're working and it's a job. Sometimes it's a career. Like, yeah, I enjoy this. Do I feel passionate? Not necessarily. And then as you go down the spectrum, calling. So I feel like my 5 to 9 is a calling. It is something that comes very naturally to me. Building that business almost seemed effortless. And because I'm so passionate about helping people become the best versions of themselves. And so it felt like a complete calling. My day job is a passion. Mm-hmm. And I'm very fortunate that these 2 pieces of my life fall into that same, or fall into the end
those
of
2 categories.
Yeah. The other thing too is sometimes I get asked this question a lot, like, when do you see yourself doing one or the other? And the answer is I don't. I like doing both, because I can swing back and forth between, because they're very different.
Yeah.
And so I can go back and forth, and I want to normalize for women too. Like, you can do it all. I have 3 kids. I have a husband, and I'm role modeling this behavior to them as well. Nothing was handed to me. And so I want my kids to work just as hard to achieve their goals. So that's and I just also follow the breadcrumbs too, in the sense, like, it's like, oh, maybe I will write this book, and it's not like I knew how to write a book.
Right.
And that's where my 6 leadership pillars kick in, and I apply them. And that's what my TEDx is about, like personally and professionally.
Yeah. Interesting. So how can people, connect with you or find you on like social media or the web?
Yeah. So my website's toniwill.com. And everything that you and I've talked about or covered is all under toniwill.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn at Toni Will. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Toni Will Official. And I'm on TikTok now too at Toni Will.
Look at that. And Toni Will is ToniWill. So people, we're spelling it correctly. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Real interesting stuff. And I wish you nothing but continued success, and, go Wings.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.